I'm AP Tally, and this is Roleplay Culture. Come on, you adventurers! You want to live forever!
Come on, you idiots! You wanna live forever!
The point of playing D&D is to craft adventurers to go on adventures. I mean, that seems pretty obvious in retrospect, but as the point still stands. You choose your species, which is what you are, your background, which is what you used to do, and then your class, which is what you do now. And then you take this character and go on adventures with them set out for you by the DM. Now, some classes seem to be a bit more suited for adventuring than others. Let me explain. If you have a wizard going to the library fortress of Candlekeep on a quest to discover how to destroy the phylactery of a lich, this makes perfect sense. It's the biggest library in Faerun. Why wouldn't a wizard want to go there? Regardless of the adventure itself. But if you're taking that same wizard into the jungles of Chult, well, then there are some mental and story gymnastics that are needed to justify that. Why is that barbarian away from their tribe and traveling with us? Those sort of nomadic hunter-gatherer societies need every member to do their part, and many individuals, especially the warriors, are hunters for food just as much as they are for combatants. Every member fills multiple roles. Maybe they're looking for their kidnapped sibling and only the dungeons of Undermountain can reveal their location. But it does seem like it needs a reason. Now, that can be a lot of fun. Taking a particular character class out of its comfort zone and throwing them into a contrary environment to their nature can present a lot of characterization and growth. It can also be hilarious. But some classes don't need that narrative of why they're out on an adventure. It just comes naturally to them, regardless if they're politicking in the king's court, battling undead in a graveyard, or exploring the lost lands across an ocean. So here are my top 5 that are, shall we say, the most adventurous of the classes. We will be rating them least to best. Number 5, the Ranger. This almost didn't make the list. Tell me down in the comments below if you think it belongs. In some ways, the Ranger is the epitome of the adventurer. Aragorn from Lord of the Rings was a Ranger. Who doesn't want to be him? Out in the wilds, discovering new lands and peoples, mysterious magics and ancient threats. All ripe for any self-respecting adventurer. Where it seems they might struggle is if the adventurer moves into a more urban setting, like a big city, or even more specifically, like a royal court or something. And the reason that this doesn't disqualify them from that is, honestly, just seems like it's not really much of a problem. I've DM'd for and played with many Rangers, as well as played a few myself. We even played with a Ranger in the Waterdeep Dragon Heist campaign, which almost exclusively takes place in a big port city. And it never felt out of place that there was a Ranger in our group. I think part of this is due to the fact that Rangers choose their subclass at 3rd level. This allows a player some time to get used to their character and get a feel for the story and the setting. In the case of our Waterdeep campaign, the player realized the Gloomstalker fit the feel for the back alleys, sewers, sneaking into mansions and such. And also, that's just the Gloomstalker is really, really strong.
Woo, that's heavy. I better use my strong hand.
But even without that particular subclass, features like the Ranger's favorite terrain and favorite enemy can let you customize the character to best fit the story and playstyle you want. Even just role-playing them as some sort of bounty hunter opens up a lot of doors. The Ranger always seems to be just fine, even when out of their perceived elements. Number 4, the Monk. The martial artist. But monks are usually of a religious orientation, often being trained in temples or churches, so you would think that you would need to come up with some motivation for them to leave. But here's the thing. Just about anyone from most parts of Asia have heard some variation of stories of wandering monks going to distant lands to teach their philosophies of religion and their martial arts, as well as to acquire new ones. Even here in the US, we know of these stories. I mean, if you've ever seen some version of Karate Kid, you know the story of a wise old man coming from a faraway land to teach his young student all they know. Much of this stems from the origins of the Shaolin monks of China, where a wandering monk from India named Buddha Bhadra came to the east to establish the first temples and teach his philosophies and fighting styles, as well as to learn along the way. And if that's not an adventurer, I don't know what is. This was 1,500 years ago, and many such stories have spawned from it. So many, in fact, that even those unaware of their parent legend don't really question the idea of a wandering martial artist traveling the land to teach and learn new techniques, and maybe dispense some justice with their fist.
Go beyond! Plus!
Number 3, fighter. If the fighter was an ice cream flavor, it would be vanilla. Not a thing you're going to be wowed about, but you won't complain if somebody hands you a bowl of it either. Sure, the fighter may be a bit bland and blank, and in some ways that's what makes them fit in just about anywhere they go. There are no preconceived notions of where this type of character might belong, unlike our previous entries. A city guard of Waterdeep, a soldier of fortune searching the jungles of Chult for wealth and glory, or even just a mercenary whose only patron is coin. I think it's important to mention here that not everyone is going to care about the meta nature of certain classes going on certain adventures or anything like that. And that's fine. But some of us do care about that and want our characters to conceptually make sense. This also leads into the fighter being such a good multiclasser. Not just because their abilities work so well with other classes, they do, but because you don't need to do a lot of mental hoops justifying why 2 or more classes are being combined together, especially in a particular setting. It doesn't hurt that the fighter is also the easiest class to multiclass with, based on stat requirements, with being the only class to get to choose between 2 specific stats, whereas most classes just have 1. And with monks, paladins, and rangers, they have 2 stats that must be 13. You want a fighter ranger stalking the woods? No brainer. A sword and board ex-military soldier from hire? Play on. Halberd-wielding member of the watch? Any day. I guess that's just what makes a fighter such a good adventurer. That blank slate they are just doesn't conflict with much in the way of setting or story. Again, it also helps that fighters get their subclass at their level, making them fairly flexible and choosing one that suits a setting that the player wants. And fighter abilities in general are pretty generic in execution. They work in pretty much any situation, as proven by how sought after the fighter's second level ability, Action Surge, is, considering that just about every multiclass ever tries to get it. Sometimes social situations can be a bit of a struggle, and if you are playing some sort of guard or guardian, it does raise the question of, why are you leaving what you're guarding or are no longer guarding it? Whatever it is or was. But that could be a pretty good backstory, so it's not that big a deal. Number 2, the rogue. You know, recently I made a video on my least favorite class. Spoiler alert, it was the paladin. Of which I'm pretty sure everyone agreed on, and no one called me crazy for disliking one of, if not the strongest class. No one at all. But if I would have had to pick my second least favorite class, it probably would have been the rogue. Well, until recently at least. You see, in researching this video, as well as another video on cantrips for the Arcane Trickster, I ended up giving the 5th edition rogue a good, long, hard look. Now, I've played rogues before, but it was always in the frame of multiclassing, usually with the ranger or fighter, or even in 3rd edition, mixing it with like a wizard to make a really cool Arcane Trickster. I doubt I've ever played a rogue in 4th edition, I think. But I've never taken a rogue as a straight class, or even as a primary class, which I think I've come to regret. I think I've been sleeping on the rogue. The person who DMs for me is playing in my game as a straight rogue at the moment. And they're really showing me what the rogue can do by itself, both in gameplay, but also in flavor. So, enough digression. This is the first class that I think the flavor and lore of the class along with its abilities, don't just fit nicely into an adventuring lifestyle, but seem to almost encourage it as well. There just doesn't seem to be a whole lot holding the rogue back when it comes to going out on adventures. Raiding lost tombs or forgotten dungeons, stealing from hoity-toity nobles, and giving to the poor. The poor being us, of course. And then we come to the subclasses, which, once again, we choose the third level. Starting to see a pattern here. Have a jungle campaign? Scout works great. Pirate adventurer? Swashbuckler. A heist? Thief? Or even arcane trickster does well. Or don't do any of that. Rogue subclasses work great in just about anywhere. Nothing wrong with an assassin killing things in the woods or a thief stealing the treasures of the dead in a graveyard. There might be a slight impression that rogues belong in an urban environment. We might imagine them gambling in the tavern, picking pockets in a city square, maybe cat burgling their way through a skylight to steal the treasure from the king. And that's probably what's keeping this from being number one. But I think I've given the rogue an unfair shake until this point. It's such a classic archetype, and it can fit in just about any story or setting. Number one, the Bard. Pluck those strings and wet your whistle, because here comes my favorite class in D&D 5e, the Bard. I think this minstrel is not only the most adventurous of the D&D classes, if you know what I'm saying, but it's also the class that encourages the adventure the most out of all of them. I mean, Bard shenanigans create adventurers all by themselves. And problems. Lots of problems. In some ways, the Bard is the quintessential adventurer. Traveling from place to place, gathering stories and music only to spread that joy and sorrow to the next place they go. Whether you're the minstrel in the city of Neverwinter strumming your lute, or a skald in the barbaric lands beating their chest and telling the history of their people, it just lends itself to wanting to go out and explore the world. The abilities of the Bard lend itself to adventuring as well. Obviously, high charisma is great for social interactions. All those spells lend versatility. Bardic inspiration just makes the entire party better. And the Jack of all trades feature lets you fill those niches that the party lacks. That way, even if you're in an unusual element for the Bard, like, I don't know, out in the woods or something, and no one has the survival skill, Jack of all trades has got you covered. Which leads me to my next point. You might think that a Bard would be tethered to population centers. I mean, every artist needs an audience, right? But that's what's so great about D&D. You have your audience. The party and your friends at the table are your audience. Always. So when the party are in the middle of nowhere on a cold and frightening nights, huddled around a campfire, the Bard will be there to lift up their spirits and tell them stories of old where heroes, just like them, were in places doing the same things and succeeding. And that same Bard would record those stories to tell to the world and repeat the cycle. And then it will make sense why the Bard is there and not just performing in some tavern somewhere. So there are my top 5 of the most adventurous of adventurers in D&D 5e. If you want more videos like this, then be sure to subscribe, ring the bell, smash that like button. Tell us in the comments below, which classes do you think are the most adventurous? Check out some of our other videos right here, and I'll see you in the parlor.